Hi, the first video in this series is going to be about cognitive load theory. Basically, the idea is that nothing can make it through our working memory, or short-term memory as some people call it, into our long-term memory without us processing it. I'm going to be giving you a brief overview, and then in the next video we'll follow up with some specific instructional recommendations. Working memory is limited, and its capacity and its duration. For instance, why do we always repeat phone numbers? 555-1212, 555-1212, 555-1212, right? We can't just hear the number and just remember it, because a long time ago, in the 1950s, a guy named George Miller came up with an idea that we could only hold 7, believe it or not, plus or minus 2, bits of information at one time in our working memory. Now, a good example of that would be, what about the colors of the rainbow? We know there's 7, right? But can you tell me those colors? Can you tell me the order? Most people can, some people can't. But what if I could tell you that we could take those 7 and make them into 1? You'd be like, yeah, that's good, you know? Get 7 things and pay for 1, right? So, let me tell you how we do that. It's called chunking. Now, chunking is the ability for us to take many associated bits of information and connect them into one thing. Let's do it with the rainbow, okay? There are 7. I'm not going to do the order because I don't want to give it away. But I'm going to tell you a name. Good friend of mine. His name is Roy G. Biv. Who's Roy G. Biv? Well, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. Those are the 7, and in the order. Now, you will never forget the 7 or the order simply by remembering the name, one chunk, Roy G. Biv. That is how we improve learning for our students. These limitations, believe it or not, do cause learning problems in our students, in our classrooms, and in learning new materials. Cognitive load can have a negative effect on task completion, and it is important to understand that emotion, physical feelings and things like that can really affect how we process information and how effectively we process it. Elderly, college students, and young children are affected by this cognitive load much greater than the expert or the person who is working in their field. We'll talk about that in other videos, but for right now, it's important to know that quality instruction, and we'll talk about what is quality instruction, can have the greatest effect in reducing cognitive load and in allowing our students to more effectively incorporate the information. What are the types of cognitive load? There are 3, but mainly we're going to focus on 2 for this series and in the training. The first one is intrinsic cognitive load. That's how hard the material is. For instance, learning to add 1 and 1 is relatively easy compared to quantum mechanics. Even quantum mechanics physicists don't like it. So that's a good example of intrinsic load. It can't be changed by the instructor. There are some things that we can talk about later on that will allow us to at least break it up. But for the most part, intrinsic load is what it is. The second one is extraneous load. That's the one what we're going to focus on the most in this series. That can be affected by the instructor. It's how fast you talk, how clearly you speak, how you present the information, how much, a whole list, and we'll talk about that in the next video. And finally, there's germane. Now, germane load is when we process the information that's coming in, to be learned material, and associate that with our existing prior knowledge, our neural nets, and create a new network and new knowledge, okay? That's important because what we do is by reducing the extraneous load, we can allow our children, our students, to process that information more effectively and build new knowledge. It's very important that the instructor reduce as much as they can that extraneous load in the classroom, because they are affected by multiple things that we can't even control. For instance, how cold it is, how hot it is, how hungry they are, how tired they are, how stressed out they are. All these things will affect how well their working memory is affected. Novices and experts have different abilities. Good example is when you teach an undergraduate class versus a graduate PhD class, or have a postdoc seminar. You present the information in completely different ways. And the main thing is prior knowledge, and we'll talk about that in another video called the Unified Learning Model. But the main point that you need is when you are presenting that information in the classroom or in the seminar room, that you present it in such a manner that is slowly and clearly. Now don't forget, those of you who are not native speakers, or even if you are a native speaker, you are not used to teaching non-native speakers, need to understand slowing down and speaking clearly is the easiest, most effective way that you can improve your instruction. Also, there's an increase in distractions. This is something that we can, as instructors, deal with. There have been several studies out just recently that show that those students who are working on laptops in the classroom, who are heavy Facebook users, are greatly affected. And you say, sure, that makes sense, but here's the one that I want, wow. The people on either side were greatly affected both by it too. Too much of their GPA was significantly lower than those people who were not Facebook users or heavy Facebook users. Because people are like looking at that, oh, well, that's cool, that's cool. Distractions, and we'll talk about that in the ULM video. So basically, to wrap up an overview of this, we are looking at our ability of our working memory to process the incoming material, to move it into our long-term memory, and to link it with existing information that we have. We can't change anything from the content, that's the way it is, but we can present it in a manner that is effectively allowing the students to gain more of it. Also, the last thing I'd like to close with, you don't have to teach everything. I know you are given the responsibility that we have to cover this material, but ask yourself this. If you cover all the material and the students don't understand a fourth of it, or a tenth of it, or half of it, versus covering 70% of it, but the students understand it effectively and can use it as they move on, which is more appropriate. You don't have to cover everything, but what you do cover, you need to make sure they understand. Thank you.